Welcome, my friends, to the first episode of Think Stupid Simple. I am so excited for the journey that is ahead, but I'm absolutely stoked that all y'all are joining me for the ride. Now, in this very first episode, I've invited my friend Goli onto the podcast for several reasons. Well, first and foremost, her background and experiences are wonderful and worth hearing from, as you will find out. But number two, and maybe this is the primary reason, is not so long ago, Goli started up a podcast called Lessons from a Quitter. It's a successful podcast, and guess what? I was her very first guest. So I thought, in launching Think Stupid Simple, it's time to return the favor. Well, she's really returning the favor to me by coming onto the podcast. Anyway, I have been inspired by Goli for quite a while. We're going to talk about several different things, including her background in law, where she was an advocate for those that are on death row. I couldn't imagine what that experience was like, and Goli does her best to put that into words. It's a crazy experience that you guys need to hear. From there, she eventually decided that law wasn't her thing. She gave up the education, the experience that she had, and she wanted to go into something completely entrepreneurial. She started a series of different businesses, a photo booth company that eventually took off, and then went on to creating the podcast Lessons from a Quitter, or the Quitters Club, where she teaches people how to prepare to leave jobs that they don't like in pursuit of dreams that they love. Let's go ahead and jump into the episode. This is the TSS podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid simple truths that help us succeed and find happiness. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. I wanted to thank you for coming on board. And just so like everybody has kind of context for this, when you launched your podcast, I was your first guest.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was only fitting that this is the only episode where in filming the episode, I'm actually saying that this is episode number 1.
Yes. I feel so honored.
And you are the first in-person person in the studio.
I mean, you're going to make me cry. And so just let all your guests know from now on that I'm the most special. I love it.
Goli is the most special. So, no, but seriously, I was most definitely inspired by you in creating the Quitters Club.
Thank you.
And the podcast that you have launched. And it was very interesting because I kind of feel like going down this route is, oh, Mike, that level is so much better. Did you turn on the levels? I feel like my voice is super loud.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
It was interesting. I'm very curious how this journey has gone for you. And before I ask that, though, I should give context for like how we met.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want to give context or should I?
Let's hear it from you.
So you guys, Lynn and Jersa, your wedding photography studio, you guys were my wedding photographers. But where I found you guys were just starting. Because I got married in 2010. So we met in 2009 when I was planning the wedding. And I remember you guys didn't even have an office. We met at a coffee shop and you brought your portfolio.
You are 100%
to
right.
a coffee shop, and you guys were still so talented then, and so we got the deal of the century because we had both Lynn and Jersa at our wedding, which is like unheard of now. Like people don't, you guys have so many other photographers now that work for you.
That's hilarious. I didn't realize it went back this far. And nobody believes us when we say like we literally started meeting our clients in coffee shops. So. Proof.
So I am your proof.
You are proof.
That you got it. Like, that's how entrepreneurship is.
Was it me and Justin that were photographing? Who was it?
Yeah. No, I think I got all 3 of you guys.
Did you have all 3 of us?
Only because you were going to leave at midnight to go on a flight to China. I remember right before the wedding, you like called us. You're like, I don't want to freak you out. I'm going to be there and we'll likely be done. But I have to leave by like 10 or 11 to go to the airport because you were flying to China that night. So then I think you had Justin and Chris also because you were going to leave. But we were done by that point anyway, by like 10. We'd taken all the photos.
Do you want to know the truth?
Yeah.
We just weren't that good back then. So we were like, we need the entire team to deliver a good product.
Well, hey, I got the entire team. So the founding partners, which was really cool. I mean, you guys were such a dream to work with. And obviously it's a testament to the fact that like we became friends through that journey. Like you did our engagement shoot and then you did our wedding, and both my husband and I, Pejman and I, fell in love with you guys. And like he wanted to be your best friends. I remember like he wanted to just play basketball with you guys. Like that was his main goal in life.
Well, okay, so your husband is one of the sweetest guys. Like he is a super genuine
He's a very,
guy.
very genuinely nice person.
Which I kind of feel like, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but among our Persian crowd, I sometimes feel like words are given, but the feelings are not
Totally.
there. So it kind of feels almost hypocritical at times where like everything is so polite, but it's really not.
Yeah.
But Pagemon is genuinely one of the nicest people that I've ever met until, do you know what I'm about to say?
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah.
Until you're on the basketball court.
Yeah. Then it's gloves are off on a basketball court.
I only know one person that's as competitive as Pagemon, and that's Justin.
Yeah, that's why he loved it. So,
Yes,
like
so-
he loves people that are that intense. So you say this is just a funny aside. When I first met Pejman, I was liked him, had like a crush on him. I had been studying abroad, so my cousin was at UCLA at the time with him, knew him better.
Yeah.
And he's always been the way that you were saying too, like when you see him, you're just like surprised that there could genuinely be somebody so nice. Like he's just such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Always so even keel. That's just his personality. And I remember, and I told my cousin, like, hey, I kind of like this Pejman guy. And she was like, Goli, he's a really nice guy. But have you ever seen him play basketball? I was like, no. And she's like, he chased a ref once off. Like she had gone to some thing and he got in a fight with the ref. And it's so funny when you know him. I think it becomes so much funnier because he's literally, the man can't like hurt a fly. He's like the nicest guy, but something happens when there's a basketball involved.
There's a switch that gets flipped.
There's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing going on.
But so we played on the same team for, and I should say that like I sat on the same team for a couple of years, and he can shoot the lights out. Like
he's good. He's trying to revive that NBA career at some point.
He's a little past that.
Yeah, I know. I try to keep the hope alive.
There's not a lot of things in life where you're like, you're too old for this, except for sports where you're like, no, you really.
I mean, let's also not. It wasn't even just the age. It's not like when he was younger, he was going to make it to the NBA. But, we just like try to keep that dream alive for him because that's what he's hanging on to. So
I feel like Justin might be there alongside with
I feel
him.
like there's a lot of middle-aged men that are holding on to that dream for no reason.
Just the other day, Justin was like, I'm going to be really sad when I can't, tear it up on the... And this is a 40-year-old guy that's like saying this. He's like, I'm going to be really sad when I just can't tear it up.
I love it so much. It's so irrational. It is so ridiculous. I deal with it I say this because I deal with it on a daily basis with Pejman still.
I've almost been into fights in my life for two reasons. I've been in fights for two reasons. Racism, growing up,
as one should,
and being Justin's best friend. So every time we go and play basketball, open court basketball, it's just a given that I'm gonna probably stop a fight.
That's so funny. Oh my God, I didn't know he was so much like Pejman.
No, they're like.
Because Justin also seems like such a nice guy. Like really, even he doesn't seem like a hothead.
No, not at all. But he's not usually the one that starts the.
Right.
He's the one that trash talks.
Yeah,
and
that's the same with Pejman.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
why
he
they
won't
got
start
along
it.
so
I
well.
know.
They got along.
Oh, they were like a
And
match made in heaven.
Once they saw that, anytime my friends meet Justin and then they have that connection, I kind of just step back. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
You're just
Yeah.
you
Like,
guys
you don't need me in here anymore. I'll just see myself out.
I have facilitated. I've done my job. And now you can take over the relationship.
I love it.
So anyway, that's crazy because we now have somebody to actually sit here and say, yes, you guys met us in a coffee shop. And this was when I have told our students, I was like, at the beginning of our business, we weren't so sure we could take good photographs. I mean, between the three of us, we knew that between the three of us, we could deliver a great product.
Right.
So that's how we launched.
Right.
Now, later, you launched, you quit your career as a lawyer, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got to
Yeah.
unpack that.
Yeah, that's...
But then you went and founded Quitters Club. And this is what I was getting at earlier, which was, I don't see a lot of people actually quitting to go and do something that they are really passionate about doing, let alone quitting and starting a community from the ground up, which was what you did.
Yeah.
So now tell me, before we jump into kind of, the quitting phase and the growing of this, where are you guys at now? Where is the Quitters Club now in terms of podcast, the community?
Yeah.
Everything?
So the podcast is called Lessons from a Quitter, and it started out, and we can go back to the whole thing, but just started out with me really just wanting to have this conversation, not knowing where it was going to go at all.
That's my bad. I think I said quitter. It was lessons from a
No,
quitter.
but it is, the Quitters Club is like more of like what the community has become and what the coaching and the kind of the group programs and stuff has become. But like the podcast was just called Lessons from a Quitter, and it was more, and we can talk about kind of how the origin of that. But for now, where it is, and it's what's crazy is like in 2 years, it's really grown into a community, both for people that just really want some insight and help, feel really stuck in their careers, like know that this isn't what they want to do, but have no idea what else they should be doing, and are really stuck in fear and kind of overwhelmed and don't have much clarity. And then what I have started doing and through my own journey and then helping a lot of people is create more of like programs that help people figure out what it is they should be doing, or, you know, kind of having the confidence to make that change, even if they think it's too late or they're too old or whatever the, you know, limiting beliefs that we all hold on to. And I mean, we can go into this, but it was just my own, I honestly never went into this thinking I would do this. I just thought like I was obsessed with podcasts. I really wanted to have this conversation. And I was like, I'm just going to put this out there. Like maybe this will turn into something. And I never thought it would turn into like a full-time business. And it's just been like this growing community and kind of a platform now that a lot of people are finding. And I didn't realize that I would switch it. It's now very heavily focused on like mindset stuff in the sense that like that is what stops everybody, right? It's like, what will people think? What are people going to say? What if I fail? And so all of that is not the tactics of like, how do I start a business? It's, I can't even get myself to imagine, can I, you know, run a business? Should I risk this all? And so we do a lot of focusing on like figuring out what you want for this one life of yours and how do you start going after it.
Yeah, that's gnarly. Okay, so let's go back to you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're unhappy?
Miserable.
Tell me about this.
I think it's not going to be surprising for anybody that's a lawyer that's listening or knows lawyers. I was one of those people that decided I was going to be a lawyer and then never questioned it.
Does this also come from like kind of parental and family coaching and that kind of stuff?
I don't know so much that it was like a coaching. Like I just made the decision at a very young age, and obviously everybody was super supportive of it. And
yeah,
so
because it's exciting. Like you're like, oh yeah, you should be a lawyer.
Yeah, you'd be great at it. You love to argue. You know, like some ridiculous thing, right? As if that's why you should be a lawyer. And so my parents were very much supportive of it. And I think for a lot of us who start overachieving as a way of like getting external validation and wanting like the praise of our parents and teachers and society, I just kind of put my head down and was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this. I'm going to be a lawyer. And I really didn't question it through law school. And I actually loved law school, which is kind of rare for people that go to law school.
Yeah.
And then I became a lawyer and I was like,
and what was the focus?
This is not what I want to do. So I went first to a big law firm and I was doing just civil litigation, but then I quit. And when I got married, when me and Pejman got married and I moved to Arizona, I actually became a federal public defender.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was doing exclusively death penalty cases. So I was only representing people who were on death row, and they were I represented them right before execution. So a lot of my clients were executed at the end of our, you know, if we didn't end up winning on appeal. And so it was a very emotionally charged job. And
that sounds like the worst thing in the world. Like, I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat this. That sounds awful.
Well, I'm super passionate about that topic still, like about the death penalty. And I actually loved that job more than I did working at a law firm. But, and I would have been miserable in any other legal job. I can't explain this. Like, it is the emotionalness. It was a kind of a burnt out feeling, but it was also, I hated legal work. I just hated the research and writing. I hated sitting in an office by myself 12 hours a day writing about something I didn't, want to be writing about or whatever. And so I just found myself where a lot of lawyers find themselves, just very overwhelmed, burned out, and unhappy.
Interesting. That is probably one of the craziest jobs I've ever heard of.
It's not a normal legal job.
You did that straight out of law school?
No. So I was at a law firm for about 2 years. So I was about 2 years out when I went to the FBDs.
What made you want to do that?
Yeah.
I'm so
Great
curious.
question.
What made you want to do that?
Like I said, I was actually really passionate about it, and I had done death penalty work in law school. There's like clinics that you do, and I am still very like adamantly against the death penalty. And so I went to law school to do to do social justice work. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but I never went to law school to make money. I knew I wouldn't fit in a law firm. Like I didn't care about reading over a contract. Like I wanted to go help people that didn't have a voice in some arena. I just didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah.
And when I was one of the smartest decisions I think I did make was to go to the big law firm. I went very consciously, knowing I would only stay for a couple of years. I moved back in with my parents, and I just made the decision to like go do that and pay off all my loans, because I had like $100,000 in law school debt. And I was like, I'm not going to carry this around with me. And then because I knew I wanted to go into public interest work, and that's usually very low paying work. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to have to get stuck in a law firm because I'm going to keep having to pay this debt. And so I paid the vast majority of it in those 2 years. And then when I was leaving to Arizona, I was just looking for any public interest work that I could find. And then when this came up, it was like, I honestly thought it was my dream job. I was like, this is something I'm super passionate about. It's something I have background in law school. It's something it's a topic I would love to work on. And they just happened to have an opening when I moved to Phoenix. So that I thought it was like the stars aligning.
I mean, it's an incredibly important job, but it's just one of those where I would imagine, so if you fail at the end of the day, the person gets executed.
Yep.
There is no higher stakes than that.
Right.
Like I could mess up on a photograph or, and like nobody dies. Even a surgeon like can mess up, and usually like, it's something that can be fixed. But that sounds...
I mean, it's not as high stakes it is, but it's also...
You get emotionally wrapped up in these cases, don't you?
You totally get emotionally wrapped up, that for sure. But you're already fighting an uphill battle. By the time they get to that appeal, the chance of winning is very slim. So you're really trying it's like the last effort
resort,
of getting some kind of a stop. But you know what you're up against, so it's not like you're it's not like you're thinking you're gonna save all
everybody.
These people, and it's more of really trying to find the cases where there is some major, like there's an innocence claim, or there's something that you can really maybe even get the public involved so that you can get. Otherwise, there's really no hope.
That almost seems worse, because then it's like
there's no hope.
You're banging your head against a wall.
Oh my God. I had the first week of that job. There was an older lawyer who had been there for decades. And so I'd just been hired, and I was like meeting everybody, and I was talking to him, and he's like, so they told you what this job is, right? And I was like, yeah, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, like what you're going to do is every day you're going to get up, you're going to put on your running shoes, you're going to run as fast as you can into the wall, you're going to fall down, and then you're going to get up and do it again. And that's like the best description of what my 4 years there was. It's like, that's literally all you're doing. And that's why you get burned out, because it's like, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
And you're just this cog in this wheel that's so unjust, and really...
It feels like you're fighting a machine but you're fighting it from the angle
you're
that doesn't make an effect.
You're not even fighting, you're just a part of it now.
Yeah.
You're a part of this machine. Like, you're putting on kind of the stamp of approval of like, look, they had a lawyer and everything was checked out. And you're like, no, like there's so much wrong with what's happening, and nobody is listening. And that's really how I felt. I was just like, I can't keep just being a part of this and getting like so wrapped up, and I really felt like it was just eating me up from the inside, and I was like, I can't survive this anymore.
So this is crazy, because part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast, and I should mention, since this is episode 0001, this is designed to kind of be just an open forum, a conversation, two ways. You can ask anything, you can say anything, but just authentic conversations. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do this was because maybe it's because the last 10 years, I feel like everything that I've created in the photography space has been kind of tailored and curated and like, you're a photographer, this is what you can speak about. These are the areas that, you have authority.
Yeah.
And don't say this, otherwise you're going to upset this sponsor, and don't say this, otherwise. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so exhausted after 10 years of that I really craved a place just to have authentic conversations.
Totally.
That's it. Like that's
I love that.
my only aim. But the other side of this is, if I just followed you online and I just listened to you online, I wouldn't really know where your, I guess your, what values do you draw on? Because you are very vocal about public responsibilities and duties. I would have no context for why you are that way without actually sitting down and hearing that story. Because now it makes complete sense.
Right. Like, why did I just jump in and start talking about criminal justice stuff during the movements in the last couple of months? Is that what you mean?
Well, that and like you also posted about kind of a social responsibility to speak up. I remember a post where you said, if you're an influencer, you have a responsibility to speak up. And I was kind of curious, like that was one of the things that I told you. I was like, I want to talk about this. Yeah. So tell me, like, what?
Yeah. Well, that was, I think, in response. It was a lot of this stuff was happening with the election. And I think over the so what's happened with my platform was sort of strange. I've been on Instagram, and then when the Black Lives Matter movement, like the protests after George Floyd's murder happened earlier this year, there was this, obviously there was this moment at that time, and there was so much going on online, and there was a lot of people talking about abolishing the police, and there was a lot of misinformation, obviously, like, social media.
And that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And there was a lot of there's obviously a lot of misinformation. And what I realized, like, one thing, just going back, like, for instance, abolishing the death penalty, let's say, what was so frustrating for me when I was in that job, when I was fighting against the death penalty, is that so many people have so many opinions, but really have no idea what the death penalty in this country actually is. Like, they have no idea how it functions, and they have no idea. And so when I would get into conversations with people, like, a lot of times people have their own views about whether there should or shouldn't be the death penalty. And I actually don't care what your views are. Like, I don't care about the morality of it. Like, I care in practice how it actually works. And so I would find so many people who would be so, like,
impassioned about something they know nothing about.
That, like, I was doing this, and then be like, of course we should have the death penalty. And then as soon as I would tell them some of the facts of, like, what happens, they'd be like, oh, well, I didn't know it was like that. Well, it shouldn't be like that. And I'm like, but it is, so, like, then what, and then it would become a lot easier to get people to be like, yeah, we shouldn't have the death penalty, right? And so I started realizing, like, there's just so many people that are misinformed and then have these really big thoughts. And so when that stuff started happening, I just understood more about the criminal justice system and some of the injustices that are happening, that I think a lot of people were maybe just becoming aware of what's happening, maybe both with racism in this country, but just in general, like what's going on with the tie between racism and capitalism, and kind of the war on drugs, and that how this led to this very huge mass incarceration problem that we have, which when you have this need to funnel more people into prison, you need more police officers. And so, budgets for police started ballooning and stuff. And so I was just like, okay, I have this knowledge that I think people are getting lost. They're like hearing abolish the police, and they're like losing their mind, or defund the police, or whatever it is, whatever the thing was. And I was like, this is what people meant. So I just made like a video, and then it started going viral, and I got like, I don't know, like 10,000 followers in a day. It was like very crazy. Yeah.
This was recently?
Yeah, like 6 months ago.
Can we pull up this video? Mike, can you pull up this video?
Oh.
Can we look at it?
Yeah, of course you can. It's on my Instagram. Okay. Anybody can look at it. I mean, I have a ton, so I got to tell you which one it is. But I did have one on TikTok that went like pretty viral, and then like Jennifer Aniston shared it, and like Lizzo shared it, and all these people shared it. So
that's how you, because I looked overnight and you like blew up, and I was like, what?
You're like, what is she doing?
My friend's a rock star, but like overnight you went to like 100-something thousand.
No. So that one doesn't even have anything to do with this. Like that was like grew on its own, because TikTok's just a crazy place. But Instagram was overnight.
Instagram, okay.
Like it was like I went from like 6,000 to like 18,000 in like a week, which was very intense for me. I was like not used to that much attention.
No, that's legit on Instagram.
Yeah, it was very. But it got a lot of like questions from me about, I think so many people are so, like you were saying, scared about like, this is not what my brand is, and I talk about this and I don't talk about this stuff. And I feel like sometimes there are things that are bigger than us, and I'm not saying that everyone has to figure out where their comfort level lies, but I think a lot of people use Instagram and social media to make money off of people, and they use it to influence, but then they're completely silent when it comes to like really big issues that maybe we're facing in our country. And I don't mean that everybody has to be an expert and talk about everything, but I do think that it started becoming noticeable, like the people who I think are so maybe focused on keeping either their image or maybe even having beliefs that they know is not that they know is problematic. So they're keeping they're not standing behind their own beliefs. It's just kind of like, I'm going to support this silently while still peddling whatever I'm peddling or whatever it is. And so I was getting really frustrated with that, because I was like, if you don't have the courage to kind of stand by your convictions, if you believe something and you think this is, and you talk about every other aspect of your life on Instagram, but then all of a sudden, like, why are you quiet about something like this? And so I think that's where I was taking my anger out. And I feel like my approach to Instagram and all this stuff is,
so it's on Lessons from a Quitter, right?
Yeah,
on Instagram?
it's on Instagram. Yeah, if you go to that, you're going to have to scroll a little bit. There's going to be, I don't know if this, if you scroll down, keep on going.
I love this. I loved, seeing you go crazy on these platforms makes me really happy.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting. So my view is not, like, I mean, I go back and forth. I get that, like, a lot of people want to be inspiring or want to keep it light or don't really know much. And I actually don't, think you should talk about things you don't know much about. But I just think we were facing a very unique time in our country. And I think that a lot of influencers online, I feel like their silence to me was deafening. It was like the fact that you're not even broaching anything or like the subject seems very interesting.
I mean, number one, the whole word influencer makes me want to like that. If we can just
totally
erase that word from the dictionary, the life would be better. But I'm kind of with you on the side of if you don't really understand the conversation, I don't like it when people jump in knowing nothing about it. At the same time, it is very apparent who's just trying to protect their image.
Totally.
And yeah.
Well, and I was saying that I think in response, so I'm more in the online marketing space too. So I'm with I follow and I'm in these circles with a lot of coaches and online, I don't want to say influencers, online people.
You can say it. It's okay.
Influencers. But more people that are running memberships, running courses, running coaching programs.
Yeah.
And what was coming out was a lot of them were secretly vocal about certain ideas that were very toxic in my mind and very very homophobic, very racist.
Wow.
And it was coming out secretly that they're doing this, but then on their but they are taking black people's money and they're taking, gay people's money and they're doing all this stuff and trying to do this love and light, love and light, we all love each other. And I'm just if you're not gonna, if you know that your views are problematic and you're hiding them, there's a reason.
That's literally
there is a reason.
What drove me away from religion.
Yeah.
It's the notion that there's so many people, and it's not to say that religions are bad. It's not to say that the people, I feel like the majority of people there are trying to do good and they're trying to get better. But what's very apparent is just the people that are there for pretenses and for show, and who don't actually believe. They could be there for a million different reasons.
Totally.
And but that kind of behavior is absolutely despicable and it's very obnoxious. But there's so many things that bother me with what is happening right now.
I know. I mean, where do we start? It's
did you grow up facing and can we pull up the video now?
You gotta go scroll down a little bit. So this is one with the yellow, which I was sitting on my desk. This is the 1 minute one that was on TikTok that went viral everywhere. Let's talk defunding the police in 60 seconds. I was a former federal public defender. I've worked in the criminal justice system for a number of years. You have to understand racism in the context of capitalism. If they can get you to be afraid of black people or brown people, then they'll get you to go along with their initiatives that make other people very rich. We'll set aside terrorists and wars and Mexicans and the wall, and let's just talk about black people in prison. We're the only country that has a for-profit prison system. So we pay a business to run prisons for us. And we pay them hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They get paid per bed that is filled. So they have an incentive of filling the beds. So they lobby Congress to make everything illegal. Homeless living on a park bench, illegal. Addicted to drugs, illegal. And they lobby for really harsh sentences so those beds stay filled for longer. We're constantly told that we don't have money for drug rehab centers or social workers or foster care, but we always have money to militarize our police. Defunding the police just means taking some of the money that would go to militarizing them and putting it into our communities to actually help people. We're saying defund the police, it didn't mean like there's going to be lawlessness. We don't ever need police anymore.
But don't you feel like part of it, okay, so one of the obnoxious things in this time, there's way too many. But one of the really obnoxious thing is this like hostile takeover of the English language. That's the only way that I can like possibly.
I love that. What do you mean by that?
It like every word that we have is being taken over by some organization or someone with an agenda, and it's being reframed. Like if you were going to say, let's do, reform the police, you would say reform the police.
Right.
But defund the police is specifically like that means like to actually defund, like to take money away. At least in the common description. Like I'm not saying that's what they were intending.
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
Well, that probably is what they were intending.
But words are given such an aggressive tone these days.
Well, but you have to understand kind of the, I think the reasoning for that. One is a lot of times when things are more extreme, it catches attention, right?
Exactly.
So that's a tactic. That's a marketing tactic, right? It's like if we do this, then more people are talking about it. But I will also say that reforming this was very specifically done because they don't want reform, because for decades we've been talking about reforms and trainings, and the whole idea behind defunding the police is that our police budgets have ballooned, and like a lot of communities, like half the budget is going to police instead of going to schools. Now it doesn't mean defund completely, it just means like, do we need police officers on our school campuses? Do we need, like, can we rethink, instead of criminalizing everything and making everything kind of this aggressive approach, can we not talk about reform anymore? Can we not talk about retrainings? Because those have like literally shown to not work. Let's talk about, but yes, I think it's also meant to sensationalize, and then people get to talking about it more.
Yeah, and I fully get the marketing aspect of it. People pay attention when you use a exciting word behind something. But the reason why I say it's like a hostile takeover of the language is because I can't remember the exact word, but I read somewhere in like some like it was like what was it, like a harassment training that basically someone walks by and a guy catcalls after a woman, and then the person asks something to the effect of like okay, now was this harassment or was it sexual assault? And then the person's like, that's harassment. And then the person's like, no, that's sexual assault. And I'm like, dude, you got to keep certain words in their lane, because then you devalue those words when it comes to like sexual assault. It should be its own thing versus catcalling, which is obviously something that should not happen, but it fits more harassment. And it feels like across the spectrum, we're choosing these very sensationalized words to get people's attention. And it honestly becomes the distractor. It's like now people are arguing about what it means instead of actually working towards the purpose of something.
You're right. I mean, I definitely think that there is a part of that where it's like it gets lost. We then argue about the thing instead of figuring out how to maybe fix it. But I also, and the only reason I hesitate on this is because looking back, when you look back on history and you look at like, at every moment, we thought what people were saying was extreme, right? So like back in the day, when someone would say catcalling and someone would say it's harassment, somebody would be like, it's not harassment. They're just saying, they're just paying you a compliment. Like women used to always hear that. Like, I'm just telling you you're beautiful. That's not harassment, right? And women would start with saying like, that is harassment. It's like, I don't, and once that becomes part of the general kind of lexicon, it's like, no, that is harassment, Yeah. But you don't get there kind of until you really start questioning your own the acceptance of the way things are. And so I think sometimes it's meant to push to get us to, like, it does lead to this, like, incremental change over time. That's not to say that, like, every word is always used properly. I agree with you. I think sometimes it really is. I think that a tactic in protest and in social justice and in change is to disrupt. Like, why do people hold hands across a freeway, ramp or whatever? It's meant to disrupt people's lives so they pay attention, because all of the peaceful protesting at like the city capitol is not doing anything. And so people are doing something to get attention. And this is the same thing. It's like we're using this thing so that people are talking about it on social media. But I think to what you're saying, like one of the biggest problems is just like social media is just this place where people love to fight, and it's like nonstop,
It's so
24
bad.
hours a day,
It's
all day
the
long.
most toxic
It's the most toxic.
playfield like
Totally.
ever. It's yeah, I don't, and that's one of the things was like I don't like to participate in general on social media in any form of like I'll state an opinion. I might post something to like, you know, but I generally don't entertain the conversation that's to come from that, just because I feel like this is a conversation, you know, this is the way that a conversation should be had. Whereas on the internet, you're just shouting at each other across keyboards.
And that's why, I mean, for all of you guys that want to go back and look at my videos, I really try to just be like, and I actually don't get engaged in the comments. It's like, I went through and did like 6 or 7 videos on the criminal justice system. And I was like, I'm just going to put out the facts that I think a lot of you guys don't understand the bail system, right? I think a lot of you don't understand, like, you know, plea bargains or whatever. So I'm just going to explain to you what happens on a normal, so you can see why people that are caught in this system are so angry about it.
Yeah.
And I do think we need more people that do have the knowledge to maybe speak up. But I know that also, like, it's so hard because it gets so lost in all of the fighting. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're going to solve social media. It's a very toxic place. And I think you're right that you have to figure out, like, how do you want to engage in it and just do that.
I do think that in the near future, we're going to have very real medical guidance on how to use these things effectively.
But I don't know if people are going to go listen
to
it.
They might not. But like there will be enough studies done to show how damaging this is.
I think it's already coming out. Have you watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
And it's crazy.
It is crazy. And I think there's so much evidence now of like the heightened rise of anxiety amongst like college age students and amongst all of us. But I think it is coming out, and I think people are very like, without even trying to use this as like a sensationalized word, are addicted and do not know how, even if you get all that information, it's still so difficult because it's now such a major part of so many of our lives.
Oh, for sure. Can you come a little bit closer to your mic too?
Sorry.
Or you can just pull the mic in if you want.
I'll just pull my chair in.
One of the things that I feel like there are a lot of great things that do come from internet and social media and all that kind of stuff. But as much as good ideas can get like spread really quickly, so can completely wrong and bad 100%. Ideas. So I posted this TikTok or Instagram video, and Mike, you can pull it up. It's one of the recent ones that has, I'm basically spraying this fog into the air. It's like a photography tip thing.
Okay.
Right? And I'm spraying this fog into the air, and I'm sitting here going, I know what the very first comment is probably going to be. Because it's called atmosphere aerosol. Okay. So it's the name of the product, and I'm not plugging. It's this is the name of the product. So sure enough, within like minutes of it going up, someone posts a comment that's like, this looks pretty and all, but can't we just like use a method that doesn't hurt the atmosphere? And then like the next person is like, the ozone is typing right now, and like does ... And I'm sitting here going, not only do like social justice keyboard warriors are probably the most aggravating thing in the world. But worse than that is the ones that are completely wrong about something.
Totally.
Like wrong social.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
there's always,
How useless are you as just a social keyboard justice, whatever that's called, versus one that gets their facts wrong as well. So I go and I look up because I'm like, aerosols, this was like 30-year-old information. Yeah. It's that one, Mike. Yeah. So I go and like just Google just a fact check, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just look up aerosols. And sure enough, like, do aerosols harm the environment? And the first thing that pops up on Google is for last 20 years, like aerosols do not contain CFCs, which are ozone depleting. And that's the super frustrating part about all of it is like people like they just keep these ideas moving forward without really knowing. And once one person does it, it just bandwagons. 100%. Everybody hops on.
There's a huge, obviously, like beyond this, like a misinformation problem, and people just like don't know enough about anything or about a subject, and then have this need to yell about something that they don't know that much about. And it's across the board. I mean, I think that that's one of the worst parts of like putting yourself out there on social media is like you're always getting comments that you're like, oh God, I don't even know how to deal with this. Like, I don't even know what to say. I don't even want to say anything. But And it is. It's with every. I mean, you got to look at now like the rapid rate that conspiracies. Like, and the fact that you're like, I just don't understand. Do we not have any critical thinking skills at this point? Like, we literally have no ability to question anything that comes into our sphere of knowledge. Like, if it fits within what I think is, my worldview, then I'm going to run with it. I'm going to take it as evidence, and I'm not going to look at anything. And so, it's crazy. It's always been like this, but I think with the way of information to look at now, like, people will really just accept whatever confirms their view. So if they think that there's, all this harm to the environment, like, and they've learned some piece of evidence, I mean, no one's going to take the time to actually research. It's like, I can just say something mean.
Being fair, some people do spend the time to research, but there's a good amount that don't. And I feel like that's the argument that companies are making to, like these internet companies are making to censor, right? Like, which I don't think is the solution either. You don't fix the problem by kind of going back on allowing freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are one of the many things. I have to ask this. Did you grow up, you grew up in California, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel like what was racism and things like back when you were growing up?
It wasn't as
I like how you got really high voice.
I know, I get very high pitched. I'm trying to think, like, obviously it was around. I grew up in Orange County. It was very conservative, at the time too. Like, it wasn't very diverse when I was growing up. Like, there was a small percentage of minorities always, but it was obviously mostly white. But I didn't, maybe I was just more oblivious to it. It wasn't as in your face. And not to say that we didn't have racial like experiences. Of course we did. Like, I just feel like you can't grow up as an immigrant in this country and not have somebody like yell some slur at you at some point, or tell you to go back to your country or whatever.
That happens.
It happens. But I just didn't, when I was growing up, when I was in school, like from elementary, junior high, and even high school, what was great was that we had a military base here in El Toro.
Yeah.
And so
that was right here, right?
Yeah, it was right here. And so there was a lot of kids in the military, like from military families, and it's like sad to say, like that was a lot of the diversity, but we had that diversity in our schools, right? So we had like people of other ethnicities and races and stuff, and so I feel like once that base left, it became, Orange County became kind of, it has grown into a different demographic anyways, but anyways, it wasn't as in my face as I think other cities are.
Yeah.
Or as maybe it's becoming even now in this day and age. It's like everything is kind of coming to the surface more, and people are like wearing that on their sleeve a little bit more than they were then. But I know you had a lot more in Utah. And to be honest, like when I moved to Arizona after I got married, which was not that long, 10 years ago, that was like the biggest.
That's trippy.
Rude awakening, like culture shock.
Yeah.
I felt like I experienced so much more racism in that 4 years that I was there than I did growing up in Orange County.
That's crazy. I mean, it doesn't surprise me to have less in California, Orange County, just because it is more diverse in general.
And it's closer to places like LA, where, when you're wherever you're closer to kind of more urban areas and there's more diversity and they tend to be more liberal thinking. Like, I feel like there's a little bit more acceptance than when maybe places that don't have that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Because one of the things that, and I have to regularly remind myself, and I would imagine a lot of people that have grown up like dealing with like pretty intense things, that the strides people are making are by and large good for everybody.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly frustrating to watch the same people who did it to you turn around and actually post about like civil rights and BLM movement and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, you're literally one of them. You were one of them that stood by. You were one of them that did the things. So in the 90s, growing up in Utah in a predominantly white and Mormon culture, when the Gulf War was happening, everything was kind of okay. Like the racism was more like words and things like that up until the Gulf War. And then it was downright bad. Like it was getting attacked every day, coming home, our home being vandalized, people saying all sorts of crazy stuff. And even then, I would still say my experience is very fortunate compared to all the our Black Americans that grew up literally dealing with this every single day of their lives. I've never felt like in being pulled over by the police, I've never felt like, anything's going to happen. I've never had to deal with that kind of stuff. And most of this that I experienced was between the ages of like 9 and 16. That was like, so it kind of stopped after that. But still to see the same people online and talking about it. Frustrating. And I'm like, I got to tell myself that it's good and it's positive, that maybe they're turning things around. But then you also know a lot of it's for show.
Totally.
A lot of it is just.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a problem I think a lot of people don't even have the self-awareness to understand that about themselves. So I see that with influencers a lot. And this is what I was talking about is I'll see influencers, post that same generic quote on MLK Day, about having a dream and like talk about all this love and light and how we should all be, and then but you see that like your actions don't back any of that up, right? When everything that you've done in your life is like you literally have zero diversity in your friend group, in your business, in the conferences you put on, in anything that you do, right? It's very easy to kind of say these words or post a black square, but then not actually be a part of a solution or take some time to like take stock in how do I add to this, right? I think that
it's the Christmas sale. It's equivalent to like the Christmas sale. I mean, you run a business and today is Martin Luther King Day. So we need to put up the obligatory post to make sure that we can, make our sales.
I think the thing is like, and I did a video on this and a lot of the work I do now, and I do a lot of like mindset work is, every single one of us is racist. Every single one of us has implicit bias because we are raised in racist societies and we are fed race like images and messages that we don't even know subconsciously we have picked up. So the same way that I can tell you that, we have picked up beauty standard images, like body images, right? Nobody would disagree with me if I say like you being raised in this society, the what media fed you, what the messages that you received, like you probably equate thinness with beauty or you have certain like beauty standards or whatnot. And even if you don't intellectually want to agree with that or you understand that it messed you up in a certain way, especially women, you can kind of accept that because there's no morality attached to it. But because racism, there's morality, like we don't want to feel like we're a bad person. And I think consciously we don't think like I hate that person or I hate these types of people, right? We think like, well, I'm not racist. So because of that, we don't do any introspection of like, where am I maybe harboring kind of these implicit biases, these unconscious thoughts that have just been given to me. Like I wasn't born with, but it's just been given to me. And until you can do that work, like I really look at like, how am I showing up racist in my business, because I know I am. And so how do I find my blind spots? But I can't find my blind spots until I'm ready to actually admit I have them. And I think a lot of people love to do the like, I love all people, like live, laugh, and love.
Everybody's the same color.
I don't see color.
Eyes.
Yeah, I don't see color. That's the dumbest statement I've ever heard. It's like, I love when people are like, oh, do you just run through lights?
They are the most racist people. If they say, I don't see color.
That's literally a tell that you are a racist person if you don't see color. Because what's wrong with seeing color? Yeah. What you're saying is that like, I'm so scared of this topic that I can't even, say that I can see that you are black and I'm white, or that there has been this historic, this history in this country. And so I think a lot of times when you're saying this, like, I think people genuinely like want to just believe that they're a good person, and if they had these thoughts that would make them a bad person, so they're just so scared to even look at it that they go this opposite extreme and they like try to soothe their own fears of like, I'm like the most loving person ever, and I'm just going to post this MLK quote, or I'm going to post this stuff and not take a look at like, how did I contribute to that in high school, or what have I done, what were the messages that I saw in my family or in my church or in my community that I've implicitly taken in.
Yeah. And from my perspective, if I were to share my perspective on this, it would be, I feel like if someone can acknowledge that everybody is inherently biased, if everybody can just acknowledge we're all a little bit racist, not in a bad way, not in a way that, in general, not in a way that like we want to hurt or do anything but we have these implicit biases that are built into the way that we're growing up. If we could do that, I think that would be far more than enough. Because honestly,
I agree.
from my perspective, I don't think people here know how good we have it.
Right.
Like all the things that have experienced, some of them were pretty horrible. And even, all of you look at all the different kind of groups of immigrants that are facing really crappy things. I have to say that it's gotten dramatically better over the past 30 years of my life. And B, I don't think anyone's looking at side of like any other culture or country. Like you don't see China stopping to ask themselves, like, are we being racist? And I speak Cantonese and Mandarin, and I can tell you from living there that some of the most crazy things are just parts of regular speech. Like the word for a white person, okay, is bak guai. There's one of many. Guai bak guai. That means, well, guai is like a ghost dude. Like you're referencing the ghost dude, but it's like a bad kind of ghost. And bak guai is like white devil. This is the word that's still being used to reference white people. Yeah. And so I feel like we sometimes can disassociate, the progress and everything that we've done and only focus in on like what's still remaining versus like not looking at like the great picture.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, but I also think that, again, people get so defensive, and I think that's why a lot of times when you hear, well, if you don't like it here, then move, or like go back to your own country, or whatever the very intelligent.
You're like, I'm a citizen.
Yeah, you're like, okay. But I think what people aren't understanding is that you can still have a lot of pride and want to improve, right? Like if we're not trying to improve, then what are we doing?
That is introspection.
And it's interesting. And what you were just saying too, it doesn't mean that you don't get to have pride. I think you get to have pride in the fact that like, okay, this country is very welcoming of immigrants more than a lot of other countries. And this country is trying to make it like we are. If you want to be the leader in the world, if you want to be a world leader in everything, right? If you in culture and in like pop culture and economics and whatever, then I feel like you also bear a responsibility. Like you're setting an example. So it's like, it is great. And can it be better? That doesn't mean that you don't get to, and I agree with you that I think people think if you have this introspection, then you're saying like everything in America is bad or America is bad. And so they feel like they have to defend America. And it's like, that's not the case. It's just a matter of like, okay, there's also this history that we have never really dealt with or
for sure
truly like atoned for and figured out like and rectified what we have done. And we're just saying there are better ways to move forward. So how do we act better? But I agree with you that doesn't take away from the fact that we all can be very proud of living in a culture that doesn't want to tolerate, words like white devil.
I mean, we're talking about it. That's I just don't think people realize how big a deal that is. Like we're actually talking about it. We're actually working towards things. These are things that other countries haven't even broached yet. Yeah. And sometimes, and I would have to imagine that if you were to put this into context of you and Pagemon, if you were just to come home every single day and just criticize why Pagemon wasn't better at everything, and there was no recognition of like where he came from, there's no recognition of the improvements made, it would be devastating. It's kind of working backwards at some point to not recognize. And I don't feel like there needs to be this. I don't know. We've talked a lot about this. I wanted to actually go back to. So you decide to quit. We're gonna completely like just.
Yeah. All right. Hard left.
Turn around.
Hard left.
We're gonna take it back to. We could talk about this for days, which is why. So going back to the job. So you're 4 years deep.
I'm 4 years in that job. Yeah, I was about 6 or 7 years as a lawyer.
6 or 7 years as a lawyer. That's a good amount of time.
That's a good amount of time.
I ditched the CPA stuff after 2 years.
Yeah,
I can't even say like.
Than me.
So 7. No, I mean you had your fill of it.
Yeah.
So did you have a plan when you quit? Did you? No.
That would have been a smart thing to do.
I'm writing this note down right now.
Nope. No, I did not. I didn't even actually like. The way my quitting story kind of happened was, and I think this is the only way I would have left, because I ended up having my son.
Okay.
So I went on maternity leave. And it was just the most crazy kind of coincidental thing where Pedro and I had been talking about moving back to California for like a year.
Yeah.
And when there was never a right time, and we were looking for homes and we couldn't afford one, and we were kind of going back. It just happened that like literally the month after I had my son, we found a home that like we'd been putting offers and like never getting them. We got this house. So we hadn't seen it. My dad was our realtor. And so he had went and saw it. And we're like, yeah, let's just buy it. So
that's some trust right there.
I know. And that's how desperate I was to get back to California. And so we ended up getting the house. And so, like, when I went on maternity leave, I had every intention of going back to work 3 months later, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, all of a sudden, we were, within a month, decided we were going to move. So then I had to quit my job. And then I was like, okay, well, this gives me because I didn't really want to go back after 3 months. I was like, this will give me 6 months. I can just kind of be with my son. I can spend some more time with him while we're settling in, and then I can get another job. And it was in that transition where, like, I was kind of saying this to myself, but then when I came here and I started applying, like, just reading job descriptions, I would feel like sick to my stomach every time I would read a job description. And I was like,
that's horrible.
I just felt this pit in my stomach, and I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And so this all really, like, over the next year, it was like discussions with, like, so what happened when I was complaining about how I didn't want to do any of these jobs. And I remember poor Pejman was like, so why don't you just do something else? And I remember like my eyes rolled in the back of my head. I was like oh, just do something else.
Craziest idea
ever.
I
was like, what are you talking about? I have a law degree, right? I've spent my entire life. This is all I know how to do. I literally have no other skills. Do something else. So, I mean, the poor guy tried for so long to try to like plant the seed of like, you don't have to do this if you're miserable. And I ended up actually getting like really far into this interview process for a very prestigious nonprofit that does amazing work. But they kept hammering in, which like, this didn't cause any red flags to go off because this is very much aligned with most legal jobs. In all of their, ads and all of our interviews, it was like, well, this isn't like a 9 to 5, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of nights and weekends. There's going to be a lot of like things. And I was like, yeah, I know. Cause like, that's just what, that's what I've done. Right. Yeah. So like, of course, but it just changes when you have a baby.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I kept being like, what is the point of this? I'm going to come home and he's going to be asleep. I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be working 60 to 80 hour weeks.
Yeah.
I'm going to hate every minute of it, And so, and the thing was, and I think maybe what pushed me out is because I was doing nonprofit work, like they weren't paying me that much. So It's not like it's like, oh, you're working this tirelessly and you have this like, at least the incentive is you're making a ton of money. And so like, that's what Pejman's like, you could literally work as a manager at Nordstrom and make that. Like, why are you doing this?
This is like 60K, 70K.
60K.
Wow.
To work 80 hours a week and do like very intense litigation. This is like a civil liberties organization and it's like very intense, which is very important work. I'm not in any way it's very important. We're so grateful that people are doing it. But I was just at a place where I'm like, why am I pushing so hard? Why am I so, I'm grasping so hard to hold on to this identity they don't want.
Yeah.
Because like, and then that's where a lot of the, self-reflection came of like, what am I making it mean about myself to be a lawyer? Like, what am I so terrified of? Because I literally could get any other job and make $60,000, right? So like, what was it
work at McDonald's and get $60,000?
I mean, I don't think that's true.
As a manager at McDonald's?
I don't think that's true. But I could do a lot of other things. So it wasn't that I was leaving, a $300,000 job, but I did have my identity wrapped up in the fact that like I was a voice for the voiceless and I was working on this cause. But I kind of came to like, at what cost? Like, do I have to martyr my whole life and not?
You also had a period where you're not waking up every day and running full steam into a wall.
Totally.
And you had your baby and you actually get to taste what's on the other side of this. I bet had you just continued that job and just interviewed for this one and went, I bet you would have taken it.
Probably. You're probably right.
That's kind of crazy though. It kind of blows me away. It doesn't kind of blow me away. It really blows me away that there can be jobs like that that are so incredibly demanding. Maybe it makes sense for somebody that's 20 years old coming out of law school to go and like cut your teeth on something like this.
No, but that's what that's what the vast majority, I would say, of lawyers are doing. They're working insane hours.
But you usually expect, like the lawyer friends that I have, I mean, they're in litigation contracts and all that kind of stuff. So they work ridiculous hours, but you also expect that make a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, in private practice, and that's why most lawyers are in private practice. But no, I mean, I just had somebody on my podcast. She used to be a public interest lawyer. She did like housing rights. And she was like telling me, same thing, she left. She had 2 kids. She had been working as a working mom, and like finally, you know, it was like she broke and was like, I can't do this because like I'm failing at everything. But she was like telling me how like she would get her like supervisor would give her such a hard time because she had to leave by 6 because the daycare was closing and she had to go pick up her kids. And like she was apologizing. Like, she's like, well, what, I can jump back on, you know, when I get back home. And I'm like, this is insane that we are expecting this of people, right? That there's no understanding that like there is a home life, or that there should be a home life, and that we have to give our entire, and she wasn't, I'm sure, in that job making that much money. Like it's just honestly, it's man-made. It's not that it's totally made up. It's not that lawyers have to work this much, but the industry has become that like you are available at all times. You're working yourself into the ground, or you're not actually working as a lawyer.
Not only that, but you're, you know, if you're playing on a basketball team, we'll just go back to a page one reference. If you're on a basketball team and the person left of you and the person right of you is spending all their time practicing and on the court, then you're going to feel like you need to as well. I mean, it's just as much as the culture of who's next to you as it is like this kind of industry expectation. If everybody just suddenly said, let's be reasonable and work 40 hours a week, the industry would follow suit. Like there's no option.
Yeah, but nobody, and that's the thing is like, there's tons of, you know, like there's lawyers in other countries. And it was funny when the law firm I worked at had offices all over the place. And a lot of times when you were working like with people in Germany, and let's say the company, it's like the expectation was just like, okay, it's Friday afternoon, we'll talk on Monday. Yeah. Like there isn't, but in America it wasn't. It's like, okay, we need this by tonight. Yeah. Why? Who said? Like no one's dying if the contract isn't done by midnight on a Friday night. But like it's just become the standard that clients can contact you at any time, and you have to always be responsive. And you know, there's these like fake emergencies that we create. And you're right. I think if there was like an industry that was just like, we're not going to do this, it would just change the whole industry. But like no one is willing to be that.
Yeah, no one's willing to. Because if it's not something that everybody does together, then the ones that do it just get their heads cut off.
And they use it as like a way of getting clients, right? So it's like, we'll be here for you
for sure
whenever you need us.
For sure.
And so then other people have to follow suit.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so now I'm curious because you leave that job, you guys come back to California from Arizona.
Yeah.
You decide this next route, this nonprofit route is not the right route. When, because you also had the photo booth business, right? So was that already going at that time? Okay.
No. So it took me like a year. I really didn't admit that I was leaving. I was still like looking for nonprofit jobs. I was looking at maybe I could do something with my law degree.
You're in denial.
And then I was in denial. I was very much in denial. And well, I mean, I was just thinking, what else would I do in it? And I think when you've been an employee for so long, I was a great employee. I'm not going to lie to you. I am great at someone telling me what to do and me doing it. And I do it willingly, and I'm not like, I have a good attitude. So like, I was like, I thrive in this environment. It's fine. Let's just find something else.
I can't afford you, Goli. Yeah. You don't need to sell
If you guys are looking for a podcaster, no. So anyways, but in that time, I honestly, because I had no idea, I literally felt that I had zero other skill and or interest. I was like some people are like, oh, if I love painting, or I want to be a photographer, or I love this, whatever. I was like, I don't have that. I don't have hobbies. I don't have passions. I don't have skills. I was always only a lawyer. So like, it really was like, I had to find out who I was, and I didn't know what to do. And so just trying to be resourceful at the time, this is obviously couple of years ago when we were allowed to be with other people, I started going to meetups because I was like,
let me see funny. What you should clarify that.
Oh, I mean,
a couple of years ago when we were allowed to be with other people.
I'm saying before COVID, when we were allowed to be in the room with other human beings.
I thought it was like a couple of years ago when polygamy was a thing.
Yes,
that's a few more than a couple of years ago.
Exactly. We're not there yet in our marriage, but I started like, I honestly was like, let me just see what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And so it was also an excuse to get out of the house because I was at home with my son all day, every day. And so Pejman would come home and I'd be like, I'm going to a meetup group. I'll see you later. And so I started going to all types of like places I had no business being in. I remember some where I would walk in and it was like a room of like 8 engineer like men. And I'm like, hey, guys.
just want to see what this is all about.
They're like, are you in the right place? I'm like, I don't think so, but I'm just going to sit here and talk to you all. But I'm so glad I did it because it just opened my eyes so much to like what other people were doing. And then in that time, I started going to like tech startup. I went to a couple meetups and like I was blown away. I mean, I'm someone who calls themselves like technologically illiterate. My husband his company is in like technology. I never even knew what he was doing. I never thought I cared, right? Yeah. But I was there and it was honestly infectious to like be around people who loved what they were doing so much. And there was all these startup owners who were like, you know, coming up with like very creative ways of solving problems, so excited about it. Like there were these pitch events. It was very much like Shark Tank. Like it was all super exciting. And I just like fell in love with it. And so I just started going to a lot of these tech meetups I honestly had no idea what I was doing.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's like the greatest thing I've ever heard.
And this is what I teach people though, is that like, you have to be resourceful. So often like we want someone to give us the answer, right? And it's like, I didn't know, there was no answer, but I was like, I'm not going to find it sitting on my couch. So I might as well get out there and figure out what's happening. Like and with each one I would go to, like somebody would mention something like a podcast or whatever. And I would just start researching that. And then I would find, you know, it would just lead me to either like rabbit holes or I just met so many people that really helped me along the way. And it started getting me thinking like, could I start my own business? Could I do something? Like maybe, do I want to start something myself? Because I'd always said, it's so funny, Pedro makes so much fun of me and how much I've changed. Like he's like, I can't even believe you're the same person. Because I tell you, like I had a story in my mind. I went to law school, like I was on this like righteous fight. Like I'm fighting the good fight. I'm not going for money. I don't even like money. I had made these rules that like I'm bad at business. I have no idea. I don't even care about money. So why would I want
self-imposed boundaries and boxes. Yeah.
Totally. So like just the idea of saying I would start a business seemed so insane to me because I'd spent so much of my life saying like I don't care about business and I think business is evil and whatever other ridiculous thoughts I had.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, again, another seed. And I was like, could I start something? And so the photo booth idea just came about because my son was turning 1 at this point. And I wanted to make a photo booth for his first birthday. And I didn't want to spend like $1,000 to have a photo booth rental. It wasn't that serious. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure with an iPad, I can figure something out. And so in that process, and my husband makes like single board computers. We were talking about it. And he's like, you could probably make one. I can help you make one. And then it went down this rabbit hole. And I was like, it is super cool. People need this. Like we want something for parties that's not crazy expensive just to do like, you know, whatever. And honestly, I feel like now looking back, and I wanted to grasp something. I was like, I knew at the time, like this isn't what my passion is or what I'm like meant to do. But I was like, I need to start something just so I can move forward because like I won't think my way to the end of this. So it's like, I just got to see, can I build a business? Can I create a product? Is this something I like? How would I ever know if I don't try it? So I really just went like, I'm just going to give myself the next year to try this photo booth business. And like, that's where that started.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, and I mean, I look back and so ridiculous. Maybe for my first business, I shouldn't have like started something that was both manufacturing hardware and software, but hindsight's 20/20. And I spent a lot of time, energy and money building out that company, but it honestly taught me. So I did that for like 3 or 4, I mean, I'm still doing it, but I'm just saying like I built that out from like 2015 to about 2018, 17, 18. And then like I designed a photo booth and I manufactured it and I started selling it and I started renting it and I made an app for it and I did all this stuff. And it was really more in shifting my own identity about what's possible, what I can do, what I'm limited to, why I care so much about what other people think of me, and all of this other stuff. And then that was what led me to want to start Lessons from a Quitter, because I felt so many people that I would talk to were like, oh my God, I hate the law too, but like, I wish I could leave. And I would be like, you can. Like, there's no reason you can't. And I felt like so many people felt stuck, and they didn't realize that like you don't have to stay in something that you hate for the next 30 years just because you chose it when you were 20, you know, like you can do something. And so then it just became this evolution of the newest business.
I can't tell you how much I love this story because so often I hear exactly those words of like, well, I don't know what to do and I don't have any other skills and I don't, and it's very difficult to kind of tell somebody that like you just like the way to get to where you got to was literally by throwing things at a
100%.
dartboard until something kind of stuck. Like you were, you know, the spaghetti test where you know a spaghetti's done when it sticks to the wall.
Yeah.
You're just like kind of dumping things, and you can't possibly know what your passion is until you know what your passion is not. And so for each one of these things that you go to, you kind of either figure out, yes, this is something that I like, or no, this is something I'm going to scratch off.
Totally.
Until you kind of figure things out. But everyone thinks it's this magical thing of like, I just know my passion.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been sold kind of this lie first that there's one passion. Like you have to unearth this one thing that you're supposed to be doing in your life. And the reality is like each one of us is so multifaceted and have so many curiosities, and there's a million things you could do. And so while you're so busy trying to find the right thing, you're missing so many opportunities to just learn and grow and see, right? And I agree with you that we're often, I don't know if we even realize this, but we're like looking for an easy way out. We want someone to give us the answer because it's so hard to go through it. And I just heard somebody post this, like the hard way is the easy way. Like that is the only way, is just
because the easy way is the hard way.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. And it's like a lot of what you should be asking yourself. And I think what I wish, again, I didn't do this mindset work. I did it throughout. And I really wish I had this at the time, but is this question of like, what is my rush to get there, right? I think a lot of times we think that if we find this thing and then we have this whatever, then we will feel a certain way. Like then I will feel like it was justified or I'm successful or whatever, right? And so we think we have to kind of scurry about. Whereas like part of the journey, and I know I would say is like it's the journey, not the destination, but, and that's the truth. It's like how can just like I was looking at it at the time. How can I just enjoy building out this photo booth business knowing, I mean, I knew from when I started it that it would not be my end goal. Like I knew this is not something that I'm going to grow and stick with for decades. Like this is just something that I need to like really build up my own confidence in entrepreneurship and in figuring things out. And in, you know.
Do you remember we had a meeting about this?
Yeah.
And do you remember what I asked you? Like, I think I recall part of this, and you tell me if I'm remember this right. But I remember like kind of we drilled in really quick that like this wasn't your passion.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you know, if you're not passionate about it, then it's going to be hard to kind of, you know, go and be happy to go and show up with these photo booths. And you're like, oh, but Pi, I don't show up with the photo booths. And I'm like, okay, but if you're not passionate about it, you're not really going to be wanting to build and you're like, but I don't build them. I'm like, Goli, what do you do? And you're like, I basically just rent them and ship them out.
Yeah.
And then they send them back to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, so why not just keep doing that and do the other thing on the side?
Yeah. No, and you were absolutely right. And I look back now and I realize while I have so much compassion for the old me and I'm so glad that I did it, I see why so many people are like, find what you're passionate about to do that. Like, because it will keep you motivated to keep working on it, right? Like it'll get you so excited to show up. And I think at that time I was, really just trying to figure out how do I just make a business run on its own. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because even I totally remember that conversation, and I do think I had like one foot in, one foot out. I was like, I'm not going to go full in on this, which was my own bad, but I just knew that this isn't the thing I want to do.
But that's okay.
Totally.
What if I told you that it took me 10 years to figure out I'm not passionate about photography?
Yeah. No, I would believe you. I mean, that's
what would you think I would be passionate about? If you had to guess.
I think you're passionate about learning and teaching.
Okay.
Like constantly learning new things and distilling it for other people. And I think you're passionate about, like, I don't know if it's necessarily helping other people, but I think you get satisfaction in like working with people and.
Yeah. So you nailed it. Learning and distilling.
Yeah.
So my passion is frameworks.
Yeah.
Like I like to take complex subjects and break them down into ways that are simple that can help people. And I like when they come back and they say that I've never thought about that way. Right. And this is, I first wrote books on how to learn language. Yeah. This was when I was like 22. And then I went into accounting because like you, that was what people said that I should be doing. And then when I was 30, I was like, we're going to pick up and do photography despite having no experience in it whatsoever. And I thought that I actually really loved photography. And then it took me multiple years of just like shooting to realize once the shine wore off, I was kind of like, it's not the actual photography that I appreciate. It's all the frameworks that I've created to teach somebody how to do this thing, from business to the creative side, to the lighting side, to the posing, the directing, like all these different components. Like I love frameworks.
Totally.
So, but it took me 10 years to figure that out of like, photography wasn't my passion.
Right. It was just like the tool that
It's the
allowed
medium.
you to, it's the medium that,
And I'm going to still shoot, but I can still shoot without like being like, oh,
totally.
this is like the one, like I think now, knowing what I know now, this is the one thing that I want to be doing. Like, so this platform is supposed to be my place to have the conversations that I've always been wanting to have and to basically get research for future frameworks, like what other things that I want to do.
That.
But I'm still going to keep shooting. And I feel like you can still do the same.
Totally.
With your thing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think with so one of the things that the photo booth business, I think for me was lacking. And I love that you said that, because over the last 6 years, I've been trying to very, very much pay attention to like, where do I gain my energy from, and what drains my energy, and what are the things I look forward to, and what are the things that I don't. And so what was interesting, like for instance, obviously I think it's very obvious that I like talking to people and I'm outgoing. And that's why I was so excited about doing the podcast. But what's been like the most interesting thing for me in the last 2 years is kind of discovering is I don't love the podcast as much as I thought I would, like the interviews and like
this is interesting. Yeah, tell me.
I know. And what I thought, like I fought coaching for so long because I had my own, again, thoughts wrapped up in it. And I was like, I don't know how to coach people, and nothing lights me up like coaching does. I mean, I could run marathons after I have coaching calls. It is like, I feel like I've finally found the thing that lights me up the most. And I've realized, like for me, when you're saying this, like my two biggest passions are learning, like you're saying, and instant distilling is definitely not one, but it's getting, like, I love teaching in order to like help people find their potential. Like nothing makes me happier than the messages I get when people are saying that they like found, the podcast and then they decided to quit and now they're doing this thing that they love. It's like, that is my bread and butter.
You're an obstacle remover.
I am an obstacle remover. That's a great way of putting it.
That's your professional title.
I love it. And I'm not saying I don't love the podcast. I do, but it's just like I've been tuning into like the happiest I ever am is working with people and getting them to see what is possible and getting them to like figure out exactly just the possibility that they have for their lives. But again, I wouldn't get there if I didn't try a million things and with each step like figure out what is the thing about this business that I really love the most. Like what you were talking about, with the photography business, what part of it do I want to work on all the time, and what part do I want to delegate? What part do I wish I didn't have to do, and it's just kind of in that process. And I think the problem with the photo booth business, again, is I didn't have a lot of interaction with people. It was still me because I'd made the business that way, but I'm just saying like it was more of, I don't like to just be around people just to be around them. Like I like having, deeper conversations and pulling like things that are worthwhile. And I feel like through coaching, I've been able to do that, to get to like really deep personal issues of like, why are you, why do you care so much about other people's validation for your own life, and like really tackling things that have stopped people for their whole lives. Like that excites me to no end.
I love that. I mean, I'm with you on that too, in terms of like, I don't need companionship just for the sake of companionship. I'm happy by myself but I love having people around me with those that I can have like those kind of conversations with. And it brings me back to like this notion of the journey, right? So like the journey sounds cliche, I think, because people just use the phrase, right? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but they don't relate it to like what it means in everyday life. And if I were to say, what does it mean in everyday life? I would say, I'm not necessarily where I want to be 10 years from now, but I wasn't where I wanted to be 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I was able to stop, just the other day, and Justin was in my house and we had all of our kids playing, and I looked at him and I was like, I didn't know life could be this amazing.
That's awesome.
I don't have to be anywhere to like realize that this process of where we're at, and this is granted, I want to be sensitive in the fact like this is one of the worst years that everybody is facing, right? And yet at the same time, we can look at this and say, this is kind of a pit stop in this
grand thing. Yeah.
Kind of scheme of thousands of years. And Joe Rogan had this piece, and I don't want to, I love Joe Rogan. I'm going to reference him as much as I want.
Go ahead.
Okay?
It's your podcast. You do you.
He posted, and I think you have to be high to appreciate what he posts a lot of times, which I'm not. So like,
right.
I only take it for what it is. But he posted this image of like, if you ever need perspective, just go ahead and remember that we're essentially on a floating spaceship flying around and it's this picture of like, and you're like, yeah, we're on a dirt spaceship that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. But we have this tendency to kind of fixate on where we're at now, where we want to be, and think that is the place where I will be happy when I get there.
Totally.
Versus, I don't know, like, I'm so glad that you quit your job and you did what you did.
Me too.
But had you kind of like just walked down that, the beaten path, then we wouldn't be sitting here right now. And you wouldn't, frankly, probably be at a point where you know your children and your husband and in a way that, I mean, all the experiences that you've had. But yet, if I asked you, are you where you want to be?
But that's exactly the point, actually, when I think what people will repeat, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And then and you were saying, not really understand. I think what I want really people to understand is that there is no destination. Like there is never a time that you're going to get somewhere and be like, you know what, pack it in. Like everything is fine. I've done it all.
I've done it all.
And I feel so great now. I'm never going to have a negative emotion. I don't have a human mind all of a sudden. And there's no stress. It's like, you're just such a perfect example of that, because what you've created is honestly beyond impressive. I mean, it's like incredible what you guys have created with this platform, with your business. And if you tell so many other people, they would think like, if I had that,
that's the destination.
Then I would have no problems. My life would be so great, right? And I can ask you, like, does your life have problems?
100%.
Of course it does. And I think when we stop thinking that when I get there, then I won't have stress, and then I won't be sad, and then I won't have like family issues, and it's like, that doesn't exist. Like, that is part of the human experience. And the reason to go on this journey, like you just said, is for personal development, is to know yourself better, is to grow, is to see what you're capable of, is to like see the next version of yourself, is to constantly evolve. Like, we should all be changing. You should not be the same at 25 that you are at 35, that you are at 45 or 55. Like, hopefully you are changing. And so I think that a lot of times our brain loves to fool us into thinking like, once I have the job, then I'll be happy.
Can be happy.
Once I have the house, then I'll be happy. Once I have the family, then I'll be happy. And it's like, new levels, new devils, right? Like, you're going to get there, and then you're going to have a whole new set of problems. You're going to have a whole new set of issues.
See, that's the piece that I wish I could. So I'm working with a friend, kind of coaching him, and he's at this place where he keeps.
Do you do coaching? Will you coach me?
I don't. Well, I will coach you, because no, you don't need coaching. You are the coach. So I have this friend, and he's kind of been stuck in a rut for a long time, and so I'm working with him. I've known him for quite a while, and he keeps kind of referencing like what you've created. And it's sweet of you for saying all that. We have an incredible team, and I have 2 business partners. So when I say like we've created, I truly mean like we have created something that's I think is pretty special. But my buddy looks at it like, if I had what you have, if I can only create what you have created, and I'm kind of like, buddy, if you walked into a gym and you saw The Rock, I love The Rock. I like Dwayne Johnson. But if you saw The Rock like bench pressing 300 pounds, 350 pounds, you probably wouldn't just go and sit underneath the bench press and be like, I'm just going to do that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and rep this out. I'm going to be The Rock. Your muscles couldn't handle it, right? You would drop it on your chest, you'd kill yourself. And in the same way, if I I told my buddy, I'm like, if I actually handed you the keys to my kingdom, you would probably kill yourself.
Yeah.
There is because you have not developed the proper muscles to like mental muscles to sit there and to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to go and do your workout, then to come back and to do this and then drop the kids off to school and then to be on a production schedule and do all of these different things that we're doing. That's the journey. That's the journey that preps you for each of these different phases. And people think that you can just jump.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't do it in the gym.
No. And like you were just saying though too, like I always say this, I just did an episode on this on the podcast where what people see on the outside is what they consider, let's say, success. So I'll get people asking me the same thing, like, how do you have, like, how did you grow your Instagram like this? How do you have this, like, your audience? Or how are you making this much money? Or whatever the outside thing is. And all of that's great. And the podcast is great. And I love it. And I honestly love what it's become and what I do every day. But I always say, like, that's just, like, the cherry on top. Like the thing that I'm so proud of and the thing that I'm so glad I did and that what I now am aware of is that what I've gained by going through that is, shedding my lifelong people pleasing of wanting everybody to like me and the need for external validation and, caring what other people think and willing to feel uncomfortable and do it anyways and put myself out there and all of that stuff. None of that stuff happens if you're comfortable all the time, right?
Sure.
If you're just doing what's always been comfortable. Like the only way to do that and get the benefits of knowing yourself and getting, like, building that self-confidence and really being more at peace with yourself and stuff, like, to me, that's the point of the journey. Like the money, the business, all that stuff is great and it's fine. But even that, like I said, like with each, what you were just saying too, with each thing comes so many new problems. And so really, like, what you're trying to develop is what you get through that journey. So there's no skipping that. And actually what you just said, it's so funny. I was like such a small taste, but when I was talking about that week that video went viral, it was so overwhelming to me. I literally shut down for a while. I was like, I can't be on social media because I was getting hundreds and hundreds of like DMs and it was all these trolls and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? I haven't prepared for that level of attention. Like I just had not gone through any journey where like that many people are paying attention to me right now. And it was too much for my mind to take, right? Even
100%.
though the vast majority were positive, like there was some negative. And I was just not used to that influx. And I was thinking the same thing where it's like people want the fame and fortune or they want these businesses. And it's like, if you are dropped into that, it will crush you.
Yeah,
and that's
it will change who you are.
Totally. And it's only like through the building where you are slowly learning how to interact with these tools and how to work with this business and how to create your life and become that person and like step up to that role of like whether it's running a business or whatever. And so like you said, it just doesn't happen without that journey.
Yeah. And a huge part of it is learning how to continue being yourself through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, how do I stay down to earth and keep being the person that people actually like to listen to and to respect while doing this? And like, if you just jump straight to it, like this is literally why there's that whole child star syndrome, like skipping all of these phases and just being plugged into 10 million people watching your life. Like what chance do you possibly have to leave that unscathed?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a crazy process. But so now you have the Quitters Club and there's Quitter Club and tell me the podcast.
The podcast is Lessons from a Quitter.
Lessons from a Quitter.
Yeah, actually, like everywhere online, you could probably find me at Lessons from a Quitter. And then the Quitters Club is just like people that kind of come into the community. They'll know.
Okay.
Quitters Club.
I should hire you as a coach. So for everybody listening, Goli is a fantastic coach. And I can say that genuinely, knowing like, you know how many like fake gurus and coaches there are out there?
I know.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It is.
But a coach needs to be somebody, in my opinion, a coach needs to be somebody that lives an authentic life, that has actually walked down the path, that has, you're leading the way, right? You shouldn't be pushing somebody. You should be leading the way down this path.
Right.
You left, this isn't like I'm not, you left a decade of law to go down this unbeaten path. And then you actually created the photo booth business. And then you went on to create the podcast and then the coaching business.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that the thing is we sort of, I think we all, try to provide what we needed. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I felt very lost and crazy for a long time. And so I'm trying to provide some kind of a voice for people that felt the same way. And what you just said, like, I think it always helps to help people who are in your position, right? Because like if I never had that situation of leaving, then I wouldn't know how to relate to somebody who feels like their identity is tied to what they do, right? Or like what their parent, if they're like, somebody is, you know, so worried about what their parents are going to think. Like, if I couldn't relate to that, if I was like, well, why do you care? You're an adult. Like, go do whatever you want to do, right? It would be very difficult for me to be able to coach or help somebody. And so a lot of times it's because you've walked that path and you're like 5 steps ahead of the other person, where you can be like, listen, I get how scary it is. I get how terrifying it is. And it feels like you're walking away from everything that you've built in your life. But like, this is what you're giving up by staying stuck and whatnot. And so I really do hope that because I had that journey, because I do understand how terrifying it can feel to leave that and to start over without knowing, without having any idea. Like if I was like, well, I always knew I was passionate about singing, so I went and I created a singing career. It doesn't help a lot of people who feel like I'm stuck, and there's somebody for that. Like there's a lot of people who may be singers who want someone to help them do that, but it's like, that's not me. My journey was like, I had no idea and I figured it out, and this is how I did it, and this is how you can do it. So I'm glad that I appreciate the kind words, and I really do hope that more of us, like if we talk about our stories, I think can help people who are just kind of feeling that same way and feel alone. And then it's like, no, there's other people like me.
Well, I feel like it also gives you relevance. Like had you not had the law degree and the experience in law, let's just say that you start up a photo booth business, because this is honestly where how most people jump into coaching.
Yeah, you're right.
Is they start up one thing that's like, you could say, and your photo booth business is successful, but most people are going to start up something that's like semi-successful. They make $10,000, $15,000, and then they immediately go and launch a coaching business. And they're like, let me teach you. And what they say is they always like spin it in some like way. Like maybe they made their $15,000 across 2 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to make $7,000 a month. But they don't disclose the fact that they only made $7,000 for 2 months, and the rest of the
you're so right. And
10 were gone.
It enrages me,
Yes.
that marketing.
So to me, as much as you at times might, and I know that you've already worked past this, but as much as someone might think that my college education, my degree, and the job that I walked away from was like, what was the point? To me, that was a whole like kind of initial phase that gave a person relevance.
Totally.
Like the way that you can speak and teach and see the world is completely through that lens of someone that has those experiences, and that gives everything you do after that much more weight and that much more meaning, as opposed to like everybody else that kind of just.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do think like I'm doing something that most lawyers or most people that go that far with their degrees and with their jobs don't leave. And so I 100% agree with you that I think there's so much shady marketing where people are just
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and they're teaching something that maybe they don't know how to teach, and that's unfortunate. But I feel like that's what I very much tried to stay away from. And I'm like, this is the thing that I know how to help you with, because this is what I've helped myself with. And so I feel like I have gone on to do this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You're not going to stop people from.
Well, I think it's incredibly important that you specifically have gone through those things. And I will tell you a story. I don't know if I ever told you this story. This was at your coaching seminar.
Oh.
So when I was on the panel, which if you guys are you doing these seminars like?
Well, it's not. Frequently? We can't do live anymore. So
that's right.
Once COVID is done.
Keep forgetting what is happening right now.
I would love to do another live
seminar. I don't mean to
seminar.
say that in an insensitive way. It's just the fact that
I get it.
Okay, so we're at this seminar, and this was that a couple of years ago, 2 years ago?
It was like, a year and a half ago, maybe the summer.
I want to give people context so they don't think we're holding super spreaders. We're not doing super spreaders.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So after this lecture, and there was 3 other amazing female panelists in addition to me. I was the only guy there. Thank you for that.
Thank you for representing.
One of the only guys in the entire place too.
Yeah.
Which if I were single, that would have been the most amazing thing in the world. But I remember after the entire lecture, one woman came up to me and she was like, did I tell you this story?
Yeah.
Did I? Okay.
No, but tell me.
No, but tell me again.
No, tell it again.
She was like, okay, so this is where I'm at, and this is where I want to be. I want to do what you've done, but like, this is where I'm at now. And I'm like, well, okay, so the first step is going to be like, you need to kind of leave your job and have a savings. And she's like, but I can't do that. I'm like, why is that? And she's like, well, I'm accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And I was like, okay, well, that probably just means you need to save up a little bit more, or maybe cut back on the lifestyle and, you know, go without on a few things while you, and she's like, but I can't do that because I'm not a guy. And I was like, I don't really know what that means. Granted, I did eat like $2 burgers for the first couple years of my business.
Right.
So I guess that's a pretty guy thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I go, well, look, you can still, you know, schedule and prioritize your time and make sure that you're saving up and preparing to go down this road.
Yeah.
And I remember she said literally the words, it would just mean so much more if you were a woman. And I was like,
Okay.
can't do anything about it. I'm like, that's what Goli's for.
And
like,
there we're stuck. Yeah.
this is why,
Totally.
because it was a funny moment, but in all actuality, like I have my own personal thoughts on it. But in all actuality, when people look at something and somebody, they want it to be very relatable,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that we all want people to get us. And sometimes I think that's our own random thoughts that like this person can't understand because they're, you know, a man or a woman, or they have kids, or they don't have kids, or they did this thing. But sometimes it until you see what's possible by someone that like looks like you, it's very hard for your brain. Like you can come up with excuses of like, oh, it's easy for him because he, you know, was this or that. And so I think sometimes it helps to kind of have someone that looks like you be the person that did it. So then you don't have an excuse. You can't say like, she is a woman and she walked away from a degree and she, you know, had $100,000 in loans and she did all this. And so like, if she can do it, why can't I? I feel like sometimes we need that, but I have my own thoughts about that too. Well,
I mean, that's the beauty of having a black president and a black female vice president,
Right.
Despite whatever you might think or whatever else they might do. The whole point
absolutely.
is kind of the fact that
Like you
they're
need
the first.
representation,
They're
yeah.
the first, and they're the ones that make the kids, you know, everybody around us
Absolutely.
go, if they can do that, then, you know.
Yeah.
But then my own thoughts, I would love to hear your own thoughts. What are your own thoughts on that?
Well, I think in general, we all, humans, when things are hard or whatever, like we all love to come up with an excuse of why it works for somebody else and it doesn't work for us, right? We come up with an excuse of like why someone else doesn't get how we are because we're so committed to our own limitations. Like we argue so much. Like you say this, I mean, I still have these discussions with people every day where they want to convince me why it's
Why
not
they can't do
possible for
something.
them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, if you want to argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
Yeah,
They're yours.
for sure.
Stick with it. But if you want to think of another way, then like you have to like force your brain to like accept 100% agency for your life and say like, okay, I'm committed to doing this. How do I figure out the way, you know, and it's going to make me uncomfortable. But a lot of times it's just more comfortable to complain.
Yeah, and I would add to that, if you have to have like the perfect walking,
Yeah,
talking example
totally.
of something, you're going to spend a long time looking for
Totally.
like, examples.
You say that. It's so funny. I don't get them anymore because I actually don't do that many interviews, but I can't tell you the number of emails I've gotten for my podcast because so on the podcast, I interview people who have quit traditional careers and
Yeah.
have gone on to kind of forge their own path, whatever that means. And I've gotten, I mean, too many to count, where it's like, can you bring somebody who's, you know, the sole breadwinner? Sure. Can you bring somebody who's a single mother with like young kids? Sure. And it's like, and I get that you need that representation. You want to see that like it is possible. But exactly what you're saying is like, even if you get that, their story is going to be different than yours.
For sure.
Like they just have a different set of circumstances and different ways of thinking and different possibilities and different skills. And so if you're looking for somebody that has the exact same situation for you to be able to believe that you can do it, then you're going to wait a really long time. Like you get to just believe that you can do it.
No, 100%. And it makes me feel better that you say that because in the photography space, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I bet.
Like I'll teach something using like a certain light, and the first thing people will say is like, yeah, but I don't have that light. And I'm like, literally any flash, like any brand of flash will do the exact same thing. And they're like, okay. And then the next thing I'll post is like this is one, I kid you not, you can go and see this post. But someone was like, can you show us how, so I show them how to use portrait mode, right? on
Yeah.
your phone. Like,
Yeah.
here's how to best use portrait mode. So I show them that. Then they're like, yeah, but can you show us how to do portrait mode with the dog? And I literally repeat the steps for the dog. Like, I got a dog. And then, I kid you not, Goli, in the next comment, it's, yeah, but I have a black dog. Can you show me how to photograph a black dog against a beige background? And I was like, why don't I just come over to your house? Like,
I'll just take your photo. No, I get the same thing. And I think with TikTok, it's a little hard because I don't know how much people watch other TikToks that you have, but I get the same, like, I'll talk about something, like, I'll talk about, like, how to get over what other people think, let's say, right? And I'll do a couple videos on, like, how do you stop caring so much about what everybody else thinks? And then someone will be like, okay, but can you tell me, like, how I can stop caring about, like, what my mom thinks? And I'm like, but the same thing applies. Is your mom a human? Like, just apply the same advice I just gave you. But okay, let's make one specifically. Like, how do you stop caring what your mom thinks, right? And then, like, the next one, it's like, and then people will keep asking, and I'm like, I don't know if it's just like they don't see my like they're obviously not going to go through every one, so it makes it harder. So I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I do get a lot of those things too. What can you apply it to my specific situation? And I'm like,
so here's what I've learned in my 10 years of teaching.
Yeah.
It's okay to say the same thing over and over and over. And
in fact, I've learned that you're supposed to keep saying the same thing over and over.
For the first, I mean, probably until 2 years ago, I was like, I just don't want to recycle content.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, I'm just getting it. So I start recycling content and, like, everything is growing faster.
People are like, we love it.
And I'm like, okay, I didn't know the key to success here was just repeating myself.
Totally.
This has probably been the most, probably in terms of, like, education, this has been the most fun I've had in a long time.
I love that.
It's not because, like, I guess the fun part for me is, you know, on our full length courses, like, I have 8 hours that I can go and, like, just explain away on a particular subject. And then when you get to YouTube, it's like, well, how do I create something that's valuable, but do it in, like, 10 to 15 minutes? Yeah. But this was like, how do I do something now
in 1 minute?
In less than a minute? And all of mine are 30 seconds.
Yeah,
so everything is 30 seconds.
And you have to, like, put in, like, follow me a lot. You know, it's like 5 seconds of that is just the plug.
5 seconds is fault. And it can't be like, if your follow me piece is, like, too long, it actually hurts you in the algorithm.
I'm sure.
So, like, it has to be, your video has to be so good that people wait till the end, because if they, like, so if your video is 25 seconds long and people watch 18 seconds of it, then the algorithm will serve you to more. But if it's 30 seconds long and people watch 18 seconds of it, the percentage of
that's so crazy
viewing time goes down. So there's all these, like, little nuances. But that's been the fun part, is, like, let me figure out how to take that and adapt it.
Same thing for me. It's like on the podcast, we'll talk about a mindset topic. Like, this week's topic was people pleasing. It's a 30-minute podcast episode of me just talking. So I can go really, like, nuance into why we do it and how to start and, like, what are tips. But, like, how do I do that in 1 minute? Where I'm like, how to stop people pleasing. Let's go, And then it's like, and it's really just like, that's all I have to do. It does get you to think a certain way. You're like, if I had to distill this into
you get one concept,
you get one sentence.
Piece.
I mean, it's also sad that, like, how fast our attention span is. Like, you got 30 seconds to explain an entire, like. Do
you know what's sad? That there are a lot of people that legit only learn that way.
No, I know.
Like,
the vast majority.
So because I'm sitting there thinking, like, there's a good portion of this audience that goes, these 30-second snippets are nice and useful tips. I would now like to step into full
now I'd like to buy
education.
an actual,
maybe 10% of those.
Yeah.
But there's, like, a 90 percentile that's just like, I love learning in 30-second chunks. And you're like, do you know how long it's possibly going to take to, like, learn everything you need to learn in 30-second chunks?
Yeah.
Like, there's no.
No, I mean, our attention spans are now gone. I find it, I mean, I'm not even judging other people. Like, I find sometimes I'm, like, on TikTok and I'm, like, scrolling and I can't even make it through the minute. I'm like, whatever, I'm learning something. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You can't even sit for the 1 minute anymore? Like, it's too much.
Your snap judgment game is solid. If you're on TikTok, like, within 2 seconds 100%. If you're like, no.
But that algorithm is good. It knows what you like.
It does know what you like.
Keeps you on there. Yeah.
Well, my friend, this has been an amazing 2 hours.
This is so fun. I could talk to you forever.
Well, so that's what I want to do, is not talk to you forever right now.
Let's do it.
What I would love to do, though, is I'd love to have you back regularly, because we didn't even talk about, like, all these cool concepts that.
Oh my God, let's do a mindset.
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah. So
I'm going to coach you live.
That's what I want.
We're going to get deep onto your mindset blocks.
I was legit, because I actually told you that I still get imposter syndrome.
Which is mind-blowing for most people that listen to this probably.
It doesn't feel mind-blowing to me. Like for me, it's very real.
And it's really good that you talk about it, because I guarantee you for most people, they're going to be shocked to hear that.
Yeah. So next time I would love to talk about that and mindset stuff.
Let's do it.
Now, where can everybody learn more about your coaching, everything?
Sure. You can pretty much find me on, I'm mostly on Instagram if you want to come like DM and say hi. But Instagram and TikTok and the podcast is all Lessons from a Quitter. So you can find that stuff and just DM me and say hello. I would love to hear all the people that come from this podcast that love pie. You are always welcome.
Thank you. And I would highly encourage, if anyone is thinking about quitting and starting a business, they need to get you as a coach.
I agree. I think if you're very stuck in your life and you know there's something more and you know you want something else, but you don't know how, and you're feeling kind of overwhelmed by that, come find me. I'm your girl.
Well, I appreciate you being here. For number one, you are number one.
This was so exciting.
Fist bump. COVID fist bump. We didn't even touch. Look at that.
That was
Look
very
at how
COVID.
PC we are. All right, my friend.
I love it. Thank you so much. And good luck. I can't wait to watch this grow, just like everything else you put out there.
Hopefully, it will be fun.
I love it.
See ya.